Hi, folks. I am Katie. I'm a soul midwife and funeral celebrant. This is my third time on the podcast. We have had so much to say about all things death, dying, and funerals. So last time we had part one of funerals, where we covered a lot of the practicalities and the before bit. So today, hopefully, I'll cover a little bit more about the type of services you can have and all the little personal touches that can go with it.
Hi, welcome to Room to Grieve podcast. We're your hosts, Karen and Bec. Grab yourself a cuppa, find a comfortable spot, and we'll journey through grief together.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming back again. It's just so lovely that you keep coming back, and we talk forever, and they're the longest podcasts and the hardest podcast to edit because we talk about so much and it's so hard to condense it all down, but we always love having you here. So thank you very much. So yeah, like you said in the introduction, we spoke last time more about sort of funerals, the different types of funerals that were available, and sort of being a little bit more prepared in the run up to a death, if you can be, opening up those conversations and just being aware of what choices that we have. And then, as usual, we ran out of time because we talked too much. And so we didn't actually get to cover details about what the actual services are. And, what they look like and sort of what we can expect. So, yeah, do you want to... I don't even know where to ask you to start, really. So where do you want to start with that?
I just thought we kind of finished the last one. We started talking about coffins, didn't we? And I spoke a lot about coffin handles. With the coffins, it's first worth noting that you don't have to go in a coffin. Some people will use a shroud, which is basically like a blanket that you get wrapped in, and it's often made of wool. And with that as well, you can have a shroud that you can decorate, whether you can paint, you can knit, it can be a real community or family affair. The same as coffins, you can get coffins that you can design, draw on, print
we
stuff
had that
on.
For Bradley's was covered in loads of different photos, which then ended up making it. His friends all said that they felt because it had the photos on it, they could go up to his coffin and talk to him because they could feel like they were just looking at the photos.
It was approachable.
Yeah. They said it, instead of being scared of it because it was just a wooden box, they could, in their mind, just go, let's just go and have a look at the pictures. And then they all said they all had a little chat with Bradley, and they all took photos of themselves, in the church, like group photos of all of his friends, but it was the pictures that allowed them to approach it. But sorry.
No, but that's exactly why it's worth thinking about what you do for your coffin or your shroud, and knowing that you can personalize it. A friend of mine that died last year, she had her pictures all over her coffin, and she also came into the soundtrack from Pirates of the Caribbean because she loved the films. So what we did was we made everybody, because there's a bit of a weird etiquette. If you're in a chapel or a church, when the coffin comes in, if you're already in there, which you don't have to be, but quite often if people are sat down, there's a weird etiquette that you kind of don't look. You wait for the person to come past you. Whereas I made a point of saying, you all need to turn around and see this. So we got all the congregation to turn around and watch her come into this Pirates of the Caribbean because of the pictures that were on her coffin. So people could really see it rather than only seeing the back end of it.
Yeah.
Because also, and I'm sure they won't mind me sharing this, but when she had chemo, she lost her hair. And there's a picture of her where she had a purple bandana on. And her husband likened her to the Ninja Turtle, Donatello. I mean, she found it hilarious, and it was really funny. So that picture was on there as well. So it was just brilliant. So, but that exactly like you said with Bradley's friends, my friend calls it connection points. It creates a connection point. It creates a moment, a separate memory. It allows for something extra when you do those personal touches. And like I said, it's the same with the shroud. You can have it knitted, designed, things woven into it. You can do so much. And it can be a family affair or a community event. A friend of mine lost her daughter, and the family had a cardboard coffin and had it at the house where her nieces and nephews and family all decorated it.
Oh, that sounds cool.
And again, it allowed the kids to be involved, the young ones, which is really valuable for them. It allowed some kind of extra, we're doing this for her. Do you know what I mean? It just made more love. It made more memory in a really
a very difficult situation, just that little bit easier. And how long, how many years will they be talking about what they did with that coffin?
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But the same with Bradley's friends, when you have photos
Yeah.
or bright. I know Emily she had a black coffin and the colours, and it was all her.
Yeah.
Those bits are then what you remember, because it feels hideous to say goodbye to somebody you love, but to know that it's done in a way that is so them.
Yeah.
It's so supportive when you then have to figure out trudging through treacle the next day, knowing that those little bits have been done. So the coffin is a really powerful thing to people need to know they can take charge of that choice, and they have choices. And there's loads of companies that will supply to families directly. A lot of bigger companies will only supply to funeral directors, which is fine, but you can buy your own coffin. You can buy flat pack coffins you can have as a bookcase, and then it folds down into something else. You can properly, like Amazon, IKEA the shit out of this stuff if you want to. Yeah. So many people have got them stuck in the loft or under sofas and beds, ready to use as and when they need it. And because some of them, as long as they're made out of the right wood, with obviously the right, like no paint or lacquer, or the right paint or adhesive, because of if you're being cremated because of the flames.
Didn't even think about that.
So you can't. Well, you can buy it off Amazon and IKEA, but it's got to be the right type mark type stuff with the right standard. But it is doable. And I remember I went to a national funeral exhibition. I think I've said to you that's how rock and roll I am and how fun I am with my weekends. But at the national funeral exhibition, they have so many coffins and caskets, and I'll come back onto the difference in a minute. But one of the best ones I saw was this bright purple, glittery, sparkly coffin, and on the side of it, it had "Return to Sender." I thought that was brilliant. So whether it was a tribute to Elvis or whether it was religious,
I was about to ask that. Was it? Yeah.
Either way, it worked.
Yeah.
But do you know the difference between a coffin and a casket?
No.
It's a casket, like in my mind, a casket's woven. It's more sort of, I don't know whether it's because it rhymes with basket, but like.
Well, I can absolutely see your train of thought. The traditional difference is the side. So a casket will have 4 sides, like a rectangle, and a coffin obviously has 6.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's the traditional difference between a coffin and a casket.
So the casket's more of a box.
Yeah,
whereas
and
a coffin's more of a coffin
shape.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just the coffin has 6 sides, the casket has 4. That's the traditional difference. But again, there's no right or wrong with what you use, how you design it, what it's made of, as long as it's all the right, like I said, proper legal stamped, whatever stuff it needs to be. And like I said about the handles, most handles on most coffins are absolutely useless, and they do cost money. The only time handles are useful is if you're obviously using them to carry further down. But handles on a wooden coffin you won't be able to do that, because they're not weight bearing. They won't hold the weight of the coffins. They're just screwed on. So the only way you can use handles that way is if they're woven in, or into a willow or wicker coffin.
But they don't explain that to you, when you order a coffin, and you just think that they're attached. And
you do when you're carrying it.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they let you know then when you're carrying it. Oh, don't use the handles. Yeah,
okay.
They're only decoration.
And like I think one of you said last time, they are helpful for balance.
Yeah, because my brother found out the hard way that the handle wasn't a handle.
That was it.
Yeah.
So they're there for balance, but that you can't use them to actually take any weight. And again, the only reason I mention that is because they do cost money, and it may be somewhere that you could shave a couple of quid off if you know that there's another part of the service that actually you want to spend more money on.
Yeah.
And they're not going to go, if you're having a cremation, they're not going to go through the furnace anyway, are they?
Well, this is the thing, depending on what they're made of, no. So they'll get taken off anyway. Now, some people, I know some places that sell coffins, and you can spend tens of thousands, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds on a coffin, where it's all singing, all dancing, fancy gold, silver, brass. And if that's what people want, and that fair enough. But even so, those handles will still have to come off if they're made of fancy pants brass, because they won't go in the cremator. So, so that was on coffins. And that, I think, again, it's a really important element of a service. And a lot of people don't even want to talk about it, understandably so. Seeing a coffin, being around a coffin, it freaks people out. I am that weird one that will get in a coffin just to see what it feels like. But, seeing a coffin evokes something in us, because we know, obviously, we associate it with death. So I think it's a really good place to start with a funeral about making that choice.
Yeah.
as like I said, as whatever you need it to be. So maybe it needs to be traditional. Maybe it needs to be a certain way because that's the only way you can deal with it. That's fine. But just know that if it is maybe more supportive to have photos or colours or bright colours or, and also you can get, so again, lots of different companies, you can get a coffin that then you can get a matching coloured like urn or scatter tube or something to do with ashes afterwards. So you can make it a whole thing if that's what you want. And again, it's things like this that we need to look at. We need to Google, we need to research because it's those touches that may make a difference to people. And I think I did touch on this a little bit as well, I think, last time. The coffin, you can actually have a service anywhere. So the legal bit is about the disposal of our physical bodies. That's the legal bit. We have to do that in some way, shape or form. And interestingly, literally in the week since we've last spoken, they've just launched the first mushroom coffin. I spoke to you last time about magic soil.
Yeah.
It's live. So,
right.
So there's 2 funeral directors. There's Poetic Endings and Poppies that are both based in and around London, both female-led as well. They are the first funeral directors to launch these mushroom pods. So they are suitable for burial, natural burial and cremation. So the whole pod is made of, again, you'd have to look at the technical stuff, but mushroomy, sciencey stuff. And inside it is this magic soil. And again, I mean, no disrespect. I genuinely don't understand the science. It is magic. So whatever the soil and the mushroom, and basically it takes 45 days for a body to fully decompose.
Whoa.
In these pods. So definitely worth researching. And again, obviously it's very eco. It's very much about that cycle of us giving back to the earth, nurturing the earth, the way earth nurtures us. It's that kind of thing. So that's going to be amazing for some people and for the earth in general. Because again, from an eco perspective, people often think, well, cremation, that must be better. But obviously you're talking CO2 and looked at the air and we're all doing earth damage to the earth left, right and centre, and funerals are a big part of that, especially cremations. So so that's literally been launched in the last week since we last spoke.
Right.
So
okay, that's interesting.
So with the legal bit, and we're disposing of the body where you have a funeral. So legally you can have a coffin anywhere, you can have a dead person anywhere. We're talking paperwork expected, not that we can all go bumping people off that we don't like and go, oh no, it's fine, it's legal, I can have this, it's all got to be legit with the paperwork, but it's doable. Now, I've delivered funerals in like golf clubs, hotels, pubs, outside, inside, loads of different places and venues. And I think I said to you, home burial. So where you have the service is completely up to you. And how you do it in the sense of, and I know you guys did it differently. I know you mentioned you had a church service, then it was a crematorium, and then there was a wake. So how you do and where you have all that is completely unique and up to you. With the crematorium, it's worth, and I can't remember if we covered this, but timings, you are short on time to have a full service, which again, you're looking at around 30 to 40 minutes. That might be great for some people, but it's good. People need to know they can request a double slot so you can have more time. You need to check with your church or wherever you are, the timings. But this is why I'm a huge advocate for thinking outside the box, pun intended, about where you have your service, because straight away, if you're going to a hotel or a village hall you've got, chances are, time. So this is where personalization comes in. This is why it's so great to think, actually, I will have my nan service in the local bingo hall, because that's where she went every week. And then that's where you think, right, so if we're going to be in the bingo hall and they're going to let us hire it between 2 and 5, you've got all of that time to create essentially an event like you would do a wedding or a party.
Is it like a wedding in that if you want to get married somewhere, you have to apply for a license or something like that? You don't have to apply for anything with the council if you want to take a coffin somewhere and hold a service?
No, it's down to each. So if it's a council-owned place or venue, they would be the people you were speaking to anyway. But this is the thing. So legally, they can't, well, legally they can say no, but there is no legal thing that says you cannot have a coffin on this premises. Now, there might, like every house, most houses or areas, you might get some weird covenants over properties. Like I used to be an estate agent for my sins way back when. And I remember selling houses where there was a covenant where you could have ducks but not chickens, and you could, do you know what, weird sort of stuff. So then
you can't put a van and a caravan on your drive, all those kind of weird
like
things.
That, yeah. So there may be places where there are covenants. So, you'd have to look into that. But for the most part, the issue is the venue saying, no, we don't do that. And it'll be because, and I had it very recently where somebody wanted to have a service in a vineyard. So this is where this person went a lot, and the wife said, well, can we come and have the service here? And they said, yes, of course, absolutely. And she was like, but my husband will be here as well. And they went, oh, no, we can't do that. Whereas actually legally, there's nothing to say that they can't, but their policy was that, no, we don't.
Yeah.
And the reason was they had one entrance. So their thoughts were, well, we're open. And essentially then a coffin's obviously going to come in. So, you could argue, is that appropriate or not? Some people will think it's not. Some people will be okay with it. So I guess, every venue has the right to choose what they do. But legally, there's nothing to say that you can't.
No,
so
interesting.
So but that's, again, another part of it that can make it feel totally different. If, like I said, your person loved bingo, loved this place, that place, played golf. Most places will have a coffin or a service there. And the funeral director, and I've done it where people have had services at home. So you can have your person.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Like, isn't that like a real Irish thing that they do in Ireland? Don't they have, or is that just on the telly? Am I just being uneducated?
No, it is a very Irish thing. Yeah, also in Ireland, people will traditionally get buried very quickly. There's a bit more cremation now as well.
Is that because they have it in the home with the coffin open and all of that? Is that why?
Yeah, and again, faith. So it comes down to, they might decide that somebody dies, whether they're somewhere else, they'll bring them home, the family comes over. It's very much about honouring that person, and they're normally buried or cremated within a couple of days. It might be a bit longer depending on what's going on. Again, they may choose to wait a few days if they're waiting for somebody to come over and that kind of thing. But yeah, traditionally Irish funerals will happen. My dad's side of the family's Irish, so I remember going to Irish funerals as a kid with the coffin was in the lounge.
Do they kind of have like the wake before the funeral, like before, because they kind of have the celebration with the body, don't they?
Yeah.
The Irish will have an excuse to have a drink.
Yeah,
all day. So I think I remember something when I was a kid about we ended up in a lock-in, and I got told to be quiet with a packet of crisps and a glass bottle of Coke in the corner. It was that kind of thing. But no, so what they'll traditionally do is they may have they'll have their person come back to the house, or they may have died in the house, and then the coffin maker will come put them in, it might all happen in the house, if possible. Then they'll be there while everybody else comes around to pay their respects. It might be that they say prayers, and it's, that bit is obviously very respectful, and it can be particularly religious. So you've got everybody around that person. Then that person might go to the church or the burial ground or go to whatever service in whatever chapel, and then they'll carry on afterwards. But that bit earlier, if they want to have a drink and a laugh and the kids running around, they will, because it's not seen as something that, the respectful bit is more to do with maybe faith. It's about the ancestry, the family, the tradition and the respect in that sense. Doesn't mean they can't do it with a pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is very open. It's a family affair. The kids are running around, the neighbour pops in. It's nothing out of the ordinary to see a coffin open or closed in a house, because that's what you do.
We don't tend to have many funerals with open caskets in the UK, do we? Or do we? I mean, it's a very American thing that you see, isn't it, on telly? I mean, is it a cultural thing, a religious thing? Like, I've never been to a funeral or heard of a funeral in the UK where someone's gone with the casket coffin open.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be totally honest, I don't know why it's changed. We used to do it. I think it's also now, traditionally we don't, because our funerals in the UK take a bit longer. So, last time we talked about embalming and preservation of the body, and actually there comes a point where natural decomposition process happens, and that can happen sooner in some people, depending on why they died, the situation. So, it's really hard to say, actually, if we die lovely in our sleep and pop off peacefully and there's no drama, maybe that could be an option. But chances are, because we're having to wait now in this country for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in some situations for the actual disposal of the body to take place, it's not feasible then to have that person and have, an open casket. So, but there's no reason, but this is why a lot of places or funeral directors will offer the option of, they might have, I don't really like the term chapel of rest. They'll have a space, a lounge type area, a room where actually you can go and see your person and see them before they seal the coffin. Because also they'll have to seal the coffin at some point because of that decomposition process.
Yeah.
Even though it might be a while before the actual service, before the actual disposal of the body. And I say that clinically because I'm just talking about it from that perspective. So I know it's not that simple. But so I think that's why we don't do it, because our funerals don't work that way. Whereas
Wow.
a lot of other cultures, Muslims, Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, they all happen really quickly. So they will they can have an open casket if it's appropriate to do so. If somebody's got a tumor or, something that's physically affected them through whatever illness, swelling or anything, that may not be appropriate, but they will often do that because they can, because it happens so quick.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But theirs happens quickly because it's more of a religious thing, isn't it? And they believe that you have to
yeah, well,
have to
Muslims
be
in particular
returned.
is quite. Yeah, Muslim faith is normally within about 24 hours. Hindus, I think it's about 3 days or a couple of days. Again, I apologise if I've got this wrong, but it's generally just a lot quicker. But yeah, you're right. It is all faith-based. It's all based on what happens with the soul. But also there's a lot that people take comfort from by them doing right by that person. So in a lot of those faiths, for example, the women will cleanse the women's bodies, the men will cleanse the men's, the elders. If somebody has died and they were an elder, particularly related, the other relatives won't see them because that's seen as an act of disrespect. So there's so much that goes on that is all about the person that's died, but equally about the people that are left behind. It supports their faith to know that if they've done that cleansing of their person's body, if that's what's appropriate, then actually that helps their soul. They're doing right by their God. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I personally am a real advocate for faith and religion. Don't care what it is, who you believe, what you believe in. But that stuff I see brings so much comfort. It brings so much community. And every other faith and culture is so much better at death than we are. So much better
When you
at it.
say we, who do you mean?
I mean like in British, generally
Okay.
Christians. In modern day, particularly, because we've just become so divorced and detached from death, like it's something that we need to avoid and it's over there. And, we're very appropriate. And we spoke last time about photos and things as well. We're so worried about doing it wrong or this. We have this stiff upper lip and we have this idea of
Being
like I said,
PC,
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to death, it's life. Now, it sucks how it happens, but it's life. And this is what other cultures embrace. So, and things like in, I think it's in Japanese, I might have got this wrong, but it's also depending on what you wear. So like Hindus, for example, will wear white, whereas Japanese cultures, you would never wear white, you wear black, but it's also to protect your own soul.
Okay.
So, whereas the Hindus wear white and the Hindus give gifts as well. It's about kind of flowers and food. And it's like a festival because it's seen as this joyous, you're returning to God. Like how amazing is that? And they celebrate and it's all done with so much love and respect, but it's done really demonstratively, whereas we think it's better that we actually pull right back and do nothing because that's the most respectful thing, because why would you? Because it's a funeral. And I just think we don't help ourselves in our culture and society by being that way.
I like that there is some faiths, and again, I'm really embarrassed to say I'm not very educated on any of this, that I think it's a Muslim faith that if a husband dies, for example, the woman will wear black for like so many days.
I think Jewish faith as well, I think.
Yeah, they can't leave the house for so many days, and then they wear black for a certain time period so that people know that they're mourning.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, I feel like when Bradley first died, I think I've said it plenty of times on the podcast, that I walked into a shop a couple of days later thinking, none of you fucking know. You haven't got a clue. But I feel like if there was some outward symbol, then I feel like I could, I don't know, I would have just liked to kind of expressed it outwardly, I think. Yeah. And it just felt, I almost wanted a badge that said,
I actually said to
there
you,
are badges.
Yeah, I wanted to wear a T-shirt that said my daughter's just died.
Yeah,
because I was, like walking through Tesco, and you think nobody knows what I am pushing this trolley here, putting my shopping in. Nobody knows what turmoil I'm going through in my head and my body. And you do want people to know. Well, I did.
I
know maybe not everybody does, but
not necessarily you want to have that conversation with people, but part of you just wants people to recognize.
Yeah.
your pain, and to, you know, maybe even give you an allowance for maybe some rude behavior or some weird shit that you might do, you know, like, yeah, I just felt very much that, I don't know, I just really felt like I needed to be seen.
Yeah. And I can only imagine what that feels like. But that being seen in the day-to-day with the mundane when there's no drama is so important to us all. So to be seen in your grief, like, that's a huge thing. And I think that's what a lot of the community and cultures, other cultures, do so much better than us. You're right.
Yeah.
Some people will wear a certain colour, but death is so much more of a community event. And the saying, and I think I said this before when I was on previously, it takes a village.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't have to be friends. It doesn't have to be everyone you know. But when something happens in a lot of other, particularly stronger faiths, if people are known through a church or an organisation or whatever, someone dies, everybody rallies round. It doesn't matter how you know them, how well you know them. They know your person died. There is the cooking of the meals. There's the rallying round. There's the looking after each other. There's the taking the kids to school. There's the understanding that you're not coming to prayer on this day. It does create an allowance, but it's still done with so much love and respect in support of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, like, you're right, by wearing the different colours, I know there are badges, I think, that say, you know, I'm grieving or I'm bereaved. But actually, sometimes you want a big neon sign, don't you, to just go,
Yeah.
I wanted a sandwich board.
Yes. I
was gonna
totally
walk
get
around
that.
with. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I think that does link into other faiths. You don't need to wear a sandwich board in a lot of other faiths, because actually they just instinctively do it. They know that you're the person, and they do have those rituals. And again, faith is obviously a really tricky thing to discuss because everyone's got their own thoughts and feelings. And what I've noticed nowadays, though, in modern day faith, with the people that I've supported that have a particular faith or belief system, is that actually there's so much room now for more fluidity and evolution of their faith. So many people, like, I've supported a Muslim family with a daughter that was looking after her mum because that's the expectation. But of course, in this day and age, she's a working mum. She has a career, which traditionally in her culture, that was not her priority, whereas now it is. So she was really struggling with the fact that she was looking after her elderly mother, and her elderly mother was very much, this is your job, this is your duty, which was her faith, which was, absolutely fine. But the daughter's like, how do I manage that when living in this day and age as a working woman with the rights that I now have? We're not burning our bras anymore. Also, when we're talking about funerals, and I think I mentioned faith again last time, you can incorporate faith like within a funeral. You can have a little bit of this if you want, a little bit of that. You don't have to, and don't assume, if anybody says they're of a particular faith, don't assume necessarily you know what that is. And we're sharing all this stuff based on what we believe and what I know some of that culture is. But I know there's a lot more scope within that, and people are a lot more free now to explore different faiths and cultures. Like you said, Karen, you had Emily service in the church but with no religion. Again, maybe slightly different conversation, but as regards personalizing your service you want, understanding what other cultures do and incorporating bits of that, it can be a really, again, supported part of it. So many people I know will have things like Buddhist prayer or blessings because actually they're not quite sure maybe where their faith sits. And the Buddhist faith is very much about love, patience, acceptance, kindness, compassion, which we all need, don't we? So
yeah.
You're going to say something, Bec?
Yeah, but that's why I have to interrupt you, because if I don't say it when it comes in my head, then I'm absolutely terrible and it all drops out. It's a grief thing. My brain has never come back, sadly.
Mine's a menopause thing. So
there's that as well. There's that as well. My grief really randomly triggered my perimenopause, and apparently that's a thing. But it triggered that. So yeah, so we have to deal with that too, which is all fun. And in one of the grief forum chats that we're in as well today, there's a whole discussion about it's a thing. I really suffer with my shoulder in my grief. I've said it a lot, my shoulder and my neck. And my rotator cuff, I've got a dropped rotator cuff, which has been since Bradley died. And the more people I speak to, it is so common. It's a grief thing. And I don't understand the logistics or the science behind it. But so many people have issues with their rotator cuff as a sign of grief.
Is it like a tension thing? Is it because you're holding it? Like, who knows? Wow.
Don't know. But if I go walking, it's not so bad now, but for ages I had to wear a brace and everything. I couldn't have my arm hanging. I had to have it supported because my rotator cuff wouldn't hold my shoulder up.
Makes you feel a bit funny.
But it's a grief thing.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
Karen's had it with hers on the left side. Simon's had it. I did some training last week, and it was all about the human compass and stuff like that. But about 6 people said that they'd suffered. There was hundreds of people at this training. They'd all suffered with the same thing. There were 6 of them that said it was rotator cuff. I put it in this group chat today, and there was 3 or 4 people that chirped up and said, "Yeah, had same thing." I don't get it. Weird.
It would be interesting to see after seeing this if people go, "Oh my god, same thing happened to me. We've done it again. We've gone off piece."
I know.
Yes,
Back on. Let's get
I
back
could
on.
see Karen going like, "That's not what we're supposed to be talking about."
So again, depending on where you are, orders of service is something that a lot of people have for a funeral. So it's that little booklet, whether it just be A4 folded. 1, you don't have to have one if you don't want one. 2, know that you can design it and print it yourself. You don't have to get a funeral director. You can create whatever it is you want to create. There's no set way to do that either. And you could have color themes. That's a really powerful way to change the whole energy of where you're at, because if you've got everybody in a similar color or a theme or wearing, I've done it where everyone's worn wellies, denim jackets, leathers for motorbike people, everyone's worn blue, green, pink, red, whatever color, it creates a completely different feeling. And then what you can do with that is add it onto the order of service, the coffin, flowers, all of that kind of stuff.
I think it also helps, especially with Emily being young. A lot of the grievers were young. A lot of the people that come to the funeral, and probably be their first funeral they'd ever been to. So that's why I said red, purple, or black. Take your pick. Yeah. And then you can imagine, I want to wear red for Em, and I want to wear purple for her. And it just made that a little bit easier on the day.
Yeah. And it made people feel like they were doing more. It makes
they would feel like everything with those colours and everything that I put on. There's always a red, purple and black love heart at the end of messages. That they were her colours. Yeah. The black flowers that we spoke about last time. And that just makes it that little bit more personal, doesn't it? And easy.
Exactly. And that other connection point, that other thing that, like you said, they can do for that person, that they feel part of it. It's soothing in some way because it feels right for them. And it's interesting because some people feel so worried about doing things like that because, how, how's everybody going to feel? We worry so much about what everybody else is going to think at a funeral because we're so worried about getting it right again, or like I said, appropriate is the word that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
If it's right for that person,
that's all that matters. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. On that, with colour and flowers, you don't have to have flowers if you don't want to. If you want to have something on top of a coffin, you can have all sorts of stuff. You can have people's stuff, hats, books, photos. Like people. The amount of services I've done, and I love this, where kids bring teddies. And it's so lovely to have then somebody with the coffin's there, but say a grandparent that's then got all the grandkids have bought a teddy. Now, they might not be able to go with them, but as kids, it creates a really powerful thing for children to either give a gift, they feel part of it, that it's their connection to their person.
Yeah.
But they may want to do a drawing. They may want to write a poem. They may want to pick a daisy from literally outside the cemetery and bring it. It could be something simple, but to allow kids to do that, at least give them the option, I think is a really good thing. And again, it's knowing that none of those things are inappropriate. They're all absolutely appropriate because they're human. It's not a formal affair. This is your person. You're not doing this to suit the funeral director. You're not doing this to suit the local community or the church to make sure that they approve of your person's funeral. This is your person that died. The love you have needs to be honoured and respected and acknowledged and heard and seen in whatever ways that you need when you're saying goodbye. But then we've had pints sat on the coffin, people smoking weed outside, everybody leaving him a cigar. I have fishing rods on top of a coffin, golf clubs, newspapers, all sorts of stuff. So again, you can have really traditional elements and that be absolutely right, but you can still add a twist. And actually, with the floristry as well side of it, is there's a big movement in the funeral industry now with floristry for it to be more sustainable. So, the Oasis that we traditionally use,
Yeah.
you can't recycle or do anything with that. So everything that's in that has to be binned. If you're going to have the big letters and things like that, you can have that if you want. But so many times as well, that flowers have been done and they're on plastic trays, which again is fine. Not for the environment, but it's, if that's what you want, that's fine. But then they're saying, well, can the flowers go with mum? And it's like, actually, no, they can't, because they can't go through the cremator because of the plastic. And the crematorium aren't going to go through the faff of taking everything out. So actually, it's okay to have flowers to send off with your person to literally go through the cremator, but you've got to make sure that there's no plastic, no wire, nothing in there that isn't natural, that isn't good, that
Do you know what felt really awkward for us was we didn't particularly have flowers at Bradley's funeral. We just had his name with flowers in it. Because we'd had the coffin decorated, I didn't want to cover it then in flowers, because then that felt a bit pointless to have all of those. And his sister had done the graphic design for his coffin, and it was a bit pointless then to have all of that on it just to cover it up. So, and Bradley wasn't a flower person, so to me it all felt a complete waste of money. But maybe so much more at my nan's, when we did have flowers and stuff, was literally we came out of the creme and then all stood talking around for 10 minutes. And then they were literally like, there's your flowers, go and have a look at them, take some pictures, and then you need to take them in the next 15 minutes. And it was like, well, that feels such a waste, because then it was like, what the hell am I going to do with them? I don't think...
And I took mine back, and everybody took one. It was all dismantled, and people went home with one of Emily's flowers.
Yeah, that's nice. It's just like, what do you do with it? I mean, Bradley's letters that were on his coffin, the Oasis and the actual plastic letters still sit in my back garden. I don't know what to do with them. I can't bring myself to throw them away, because I'm one of these weird people that can't throw away photos and things like that. What if something happens to somebody? And so I've got his name in Oasis in plastic that sits in my garden and has been there for, 20 months now, and I don't know what bloody hell to do with it. But I can't throw away, so it will just stay sitting there. So, but yeah, I do. For me, I just felt like, the flowers all look lovely, but it just feels so wasteful. Like, what do you do with them afterwards?
And that's the thing that people don't talk about as well. So exactly like I said about the flower, the amount of times flowers, people said, oh no, leave them with my person to go off. And it's like, well, they can't.
No.
Because again, the plastic. But I think what you did, Karen, was lovely. I think some people will have bunches and then separated into posies, or they'll take them to, say, the wake, and they'll separate them and put them in little vases on the tables. Some people will donate their flowers to hospices or nursing homes, or any local WI.
I think if you're having a burial or something, then that's nice, because you can leave the flowers graveside, right? So that's nice. But for us, having a crematorium, there was, a cremation, there was just nothing to do with the flowers afterwards. And it's very quickly that they were given back, like, within sort of 15 minutes at the end of the service that they were given back.
Most crems, you can leave them there, but they will still get binned at the end of the week.
We were told we couldn't, but that was obviously just a rule of ours. But
every creme, but this is why, again, it's worth a conversation. Speak to your local creme, find out what their policies are, because I know that some crematoriums will try and recycle and do what they can. I know some funeral directors that will go and actually collect the flowers to then make petals or to do other stuff with, to try, for the sustainability perspective. So it's worth the question. What does your local creme do?
And I guess you don't have to have a wake, right? And you don't have to have a wake on that same day either, do you? It doesn't all have to.
So say you're in a crematorium, you could have had a party before. You could be going on to a party that day. You could be doing something in 6 months' time. It doesn't have to be all in one set. Now, you guys did your events differently in one day. You could have spread that out over 3 months if that's what felt right. So I've just, again, another family I'm working with, who the gentleman had a direct cremation. I mean, I know we spoke about that a lot last time.
Yeah.
But what we're now doing is planning his celebration of life. So now he will be there with his ashes, and we'll have a lovely family party with lots of lovely stories and everything that feels right. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want the big fuss. He didn't feel right for his family to be in a creme and to do it all. It just wasn't right. So he was like, just get me sorted and then do what you like. That'll be quite nice. So that's exactly what we're doing. But he died 28th of December. So then he was cremated about 2 weeks ago, and we're still in the process, and we haven't set a date yet for his party. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You can. So we've got to forget the rules and just think about what is right. And if you're having
give ourselves permission to do what we need to do. Yeah.
Exactly. So for some, it might feel really supportive to go through that traditional process. And I totally get that. And I totally get why that feels the right thing to do, because they think, well, that feels like a funeral to me, and this needs to feel like a funeral. Yeah. That's a totally valid way to feel. I want to go to the creme. I want my 30 minutes. I want to wear black because I feel I need that traditional, appropriate experience for where I'm at. That needs to happen. Yeah. Totally valid. But it's also totally valid to go, that feels not right for me. I don't want that. I don't want to be in a creme. And that's equally as valid. And as a celebrant, I will honour whatever it is people need. But if you want to do it differently, that doesn't feel right, and that doesn't actually support your grief or your love or your anger, not everyone's a loved one. So actually...
We had that conversation today as well.
But that's the thing. Not every person is loved in this amazing way.
Yeah, it's fake, isn't it? It's false. It's not a proper service if you're going there, and
it comes back to those societal expectations again, doesn't it? And giving ourselves permission to do what we need as opposed to worrying about what others think is politically correct or should be done.
Yeah, exactly that. But you know what? As a culture, we are so judgmental, and we're so worried about what everybody thinks. And even to the point, so again, I've done some lovely services.
I think we're our own worst critics, I think a lot of that comes from within as much as from, the outside. I think we judge ourselves too much.
I think it used to be. But I think after losing Emily, like we say, I'm a totally different person, and I probably don't take as much shit as I used to.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, the perspectives and the positives that you take from grief that it does give you, is that ability to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you haven't got the emotional space to tolerate literally to tolerate anything out. You just haven't got the room for it.
I haven't.
So,
no.
Why should we anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes you realise the fragility of life, that, why am I putting up with this shit for you? Because none of us are fucking getting out of here anyway. So, let me just do it my way,
Totally. And this is what I wish a lot more people had when it came to funerals, to know that if they are following the traditional route, it's actually because they choose to, not because they think they should.
Yeah.
And there doesn't need to be speeches, and there doesn't need to be any of that if you don't want it. I always find, when people have discussed funerals, they said, who, at Bradley's, there was so many people that wanted to talk, but at my nan's, it was we all sat and we were like, who's going to talk? And it was why is there an expectation that one of us should?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so daunting.
Yeah.
So when I say that to people, is there anybody in the family that would like to talk or say something? And either people go, oh, well, I probably should because it was my dad, or I probably should because I did for that service. And it's okay, but do you want to then? Well, not really. Right, well, don't then.
But Karen and I, we touched on it really briefly before, but Karen and I both pre-recorded what we wanted to say at Bradley and Emily's funeral, which, how many takes did we do of the recordings? I mean, it took days to do.
Yeah, of course.
I did mine in one take, actually.
You did it.
Of course you did.
My brother didn't. Oh my God, his speech was only about 5 minutes. It must have took him 4 hours.
His friends all stood up, 16 of them all stood on the stage together and took it in turns to tell stories. They all chose to wear Hawaiian shirts. That was their choice. I didn't even know they were all going to turn up in Hawaiian shirts, but they wanted it to feel a little less daunting, and they wanted to be matching. So for some random reason, they chose Hawaiian shirts. And they all stood up and took it in turns to tell really inappropriate stories of Bradley.
I love that even more. Swearing in a funeral for anyone.
I swore in my thing. Me. When do I ever get through a podcast without swearing? And when I listened to it back, I was like, oh.
Along you did, and we knew there's a swear word in it. And the undertaker, Debbie, she said, I'm just going to look the other way and pretend I didn't know. Or, so when the ladies of the church, she said, I don't know whether to warn them or not. And anyway, it was a lanyards, and who was Emily's best friend, and then part of it. And she said, yeah. And then Emily said, fuck off. And everybody, people just did laugh because of we was in church, and because she shouldn't have said it, and because it was so Emily.
It was so Emily. Yeah.
So, Emily's language at the end was shocking. I gave her permission to swear when we were sat in Christie's one day, and that was it. It was like opening the floodgates. And, you could not have had a funeral without a swear word. You just couldn't.
Just quickly going back to the eulogy thing, what I wanted to say, like tributes. Again, depending on where you are, obviously time is a thing to think about. But actually, if you've got people that want to share, whether it's little stories, I've done it where people have organised between 3 of them saying different things at different times. You can create a little skit if you want. You can do all that. You can write something and have somebody read it. It's also worth thinking about as well. People assume you have to have a eulogy. And a eulogy traditionally means Bob was born on this day, he went to this school, then Bob did this and Bob did that and Bob blah, blah, blah. And if that feels right to have that, same with everything else, crack on. But when you've got a service of maybe a small, intimate family and everybody knows everybody, do you need to go through the fact that Bob went to school when everybody in the room knows that?
See, we were taken through that from an Anne's funeral with the undertaker. Like, they came and sat down with the funeral people and they said, what do you want us to say? And I didn't feel like I could say, I don't want to do that, because I didn't know then that I could say, we don't need that, because my nan was 99. Everybody at her funeral, she was one of 8, 9 siblings. There was only 1 or 2 siblings left. She there wasn't a great deal of people outside of the family because she'd outlived everybody. So we didn't need to tell her story because we all knew it, and actually we all had to input into it to fill it in its fullest anyway.
Yeah. Should be about their achievements in life and things, what they liked and what the favourite foods were. What doesn't matter what school they went to and what the first job was.
And that's why, again, when I meet with families, it's very much, what do you want today to be about? Do you want that timeline of events? Because actually for some people, if they've done some extraordinary stuff, maybe that is absolutely appropriate that you share that they travelled, they climbed Everest on there and they did that. Maybe that's right. But actually, more often than not, I think nowadays it's about the swearing. It's about the hilarity. It's about the silly things. It's about the fact that whenever there was a problem, they made a cake every Sunday. It was the bingo every week. It's all of those other things that we are so much more than the bits we do or don't do in life.
Than the everyday,
Yeah, and it's the everyday though. It's the characters, it's the conversations, it's the laughter, it's the memories, it's the feelings we have when we're with those people. And actually, that's what I find most people get more out of a funeral, is when the eulogy or the tribute that I might share goes on about, and they were so this and so that, but with the mouth of a sailor. Oh my goodness. Then that's the laughter. That's like, yes, that's my person. Oh my God, I remember when Nan said this. And it's those things that actually is more supportive for grief, rather than sitting to this timeline that either you do know or you don't care about, because actually that doesn't bear any relevance on the relationship you had with that person. When it comes to tributes and talking at a funeral, and you can do this in a creme, in a church, or later on at the wake or the celebration in a pub, you could have a roaming mic, where the mic just goes round and people share and chat. However you do it, there's no rule either about what you do or don't share. It's got to be right for the person, because also that puts a lot of pressure. When people come to me and go, oh, I don't know, I can't remember, or Nan never shared it, or it's like, okay, that's fine.
Or when you're grieving and your brain just stops working and you just can't remember for love nor money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything of any use has fell out.
And again, in funerals, we've just got to make sure that we are making it and creating it in the way that we need for our person and that they wanted. And it doesn't have to follow the traditional template or format. But my point is, like with everything else that I've shared with you from last week to this week, it's all about choice. It's all about knowing that you have freedom. You can have what's
deemed inappropriate if it's absolutely appropriate for your person.
Yeah.
You don't have to do what a funeral director says. You can go off piste. You can do whatever you want with whatever time that you've got, wherever you are, and every single element can be personalised. There are literally minimal to no laws around how you do a funeral. The legal bit of disposing of our physical body, yes. The paperwork, yes.
Yeah.
And I think we need to know that, like, we have that choice. We need to know that it's okay. We need to give each other permission and have more of these conversations. And it's also things like, on that note, quite often people now will do some kind of gift. So quite often, like, packet of forget-me-not seeds is a really lovely idea. It's quite a popular one. Posies, flowers, badges, bookmarks. Like, you can have party favours.
We did for Bradley's.
I had Japanese origami cranes. Can't say it. Origami cranes.
I know the one.
Take the soul off to the heaven.
We had red panda bracelets, red panda badges, and key rings with Bradley's thumbprint on a bottle opener key ring, like for his friends, so they can put it on their car keys.
That's the stuff. That's the stuff. And then obviously when you go on from that, you've then got the option of things like, just jumping ahead a bit, but, you know, ashes, jewelry. You can have ashes put into tattoos now. You know, there's so many ways you can do. You can have your ashes sent to space. We talked last time about scattering them. You can pretty much do that anywhere with permission. Ish. You know, but there are so many things that you can do. And again, there's no right or wrong. My son wants to put my ashes into a magic 8-ball.
I think you've said that before. Yeah, that's awesome.
He still goes on about that.
It's about control, though, isn't it? Because we lost the kids. We had no control over that. And by doing their funeral right, it gave us control to do something, not just for us, but for them.
Absolutely. This, especially as a mum, this is one of the last things that you could do for your little people.
Yeah.
Because no matter how old they are, they're your little people. And I get that now, being a mum. My mum used to say to me, 20, 30, I'm 42, and she'll still say, you're still my baby.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I don't know whether other people do this. I've reverted to say, I've lost my little girl. I mean, she was 16. She wasn't a little girl, but I keep saying it and I can't stop.
I call him my baby boy, but he was my baby boy. He was my baby. I've got 4 kids. He was my baby.
And that's the thing. You've lost that, and like that, you've lost that control. You couldn't stop that. You couldn't fix it. You didn't have a choice about that.
No.
So it's so understandable. And why don't we open ourselves up to actually, well, what do we have control over?
Yeah.
Actually, we can take control over this bit, the bit you don't want to do, but you're doing it.
Yeah. We've got to do it, so we may as well do it right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. In the worst, most hideous situation, of course, but this is also where my heart breaks for so many people that that had to go through this,
and
that
didn't know they had the choices. Yeah.
And they're going, oh my God, I would have done it so differently.
But I think just recognizing that, you know, you would have done it differently if you knew you could. You know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And the honesty is they did the best that they could with the knowledge that they had at the time. And, you know, all this allows you to do is to make different choices next time. It comes back to having the choices. You know, Absolutely. You can't punish yourself for what you didn't know and what you couldn't do at the time. And that's hard. And can anyone tell I had therapy this week?
Do you know what I think is interesting as well? There's nothing to stop you doing something later in life. There's nothing to stop you. So
having a memorial service,
exactly. Like, so if you do look back genuinely and go, I would do it so differently, do it again.
Yeah,
have a day
on an anniversary, on you know,
or on a random Tuesday. If you just feel that you want to honour your person, like even if it's 20 years later, if that's what you want to do, then do it.
Do it.
And if you want to turn those dates, those events, those anniversaries, those random Tuesdays into something, you could have a whole other service and celebration if you want. You could raise a glass. You could do any of those things. If it supports you in your grief and it brings you extra love, do it.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the pub, I've done funerals as well where people have all raised a glass at the end. You know, champagne, a toast.
Yeah.
A toast to so-and-so, clapping, laughing.
Yeah.
And I'll say to people in some services, particularly if I've been swearing or I will be swearing, or there are funny stories or inappropriate stories, I'll say to people, it's okay to laugh today. It's okay to be here in this space at a funeral and laugh.
Yeah.
Grief is all of these things.
Yeah.
We're laughing because of the love, and we're grieving because of the love. So all of it is welcome, and all of it is allowed. And that's the other thing to remember. You're going to feel like crap at a funeral. You're saying goodbye to somebody you don't want to say goodbye to. So if there is anything in there that can be done to crack a tiny smile, like I said, to create some more love, why aren't we doing it?
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing it when we do have the choice and the power?
We have talked and talked and talked.
Yes, again.
again.
And I can still keep talking, because as I'm thinking, there's other ideas and things that are popping into my head.
Yeah,
So
and me.
I think the main message, though, isn't it? Is choice.
Yes,
freedom,
permission,
ask questions, have the conversation. Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Thank you, Katie, for coming on again and being, educating us all again. Like I say, us three just rabbit for England. Probably three of the worst people to put in a room together, aren't we? Especially me and you, Katie. I think Karen sits there like thinking, my God, what have I done?
Can't get a word in edgeways.
No, but thank you both very much, and thank you for the work that you do. And we spoke about it a little bit last time, I think, off of recording, but for the way that you are approaching this so openly, having lost children, which is obviously one of the, I think, the most poignant things you can go through in life. I thank you both for the work that you do and the way that you do it, because I think it's really healthy. I think it's really refreshing. And I think people that are grieving, or people that have gone through something like yourselves, the world needs people like you to show
That's
that it's
very
okay
kind.
to
Thank you.
No, it's so needed. You need to laugh amidst the humour. You need to swear. You need to shout and scream. It doesn't matter how you grieve; it's all valid. But I think the way you're doing it, I think, like I said, is magical, and is such an incredible way to honour your children. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Oh, I feel a bit humbled. Thanks.
I'll pay you
That's
later for saying that.
No, it's true. And I know we spoke about, people think there's a same thing with everything we've said. People think there's a certain way to grieve. And if you're not doing this, then you're not grieving properly, or you're not grieving enough, or you're over it, or it's been long enough. And there's all this bollocks that gets thrown at us for grief and life and what society says. Just because you don't maybe grieve in the same way that somebody else doesn't make your grief any less valid. It doesn't, that no one's worse or better off in grief. It all sucks. And what you lost with your person is unique to you, and no one can tell you what's right or wrong. And I think, but what you're doing and the ways that you're finding to cope, because that's what you just cope, don't you? You don't know how. You just trudge through treacle, like I said, every day. But I think to have people like you in the world that are living with grief and still trying to make magic in the world and create more love, like we've said about, like I said, I think we need more of it. So, and I'm right behind you.
Oh, thank you
very much.
Yeah. So on that note,
we'll say good night.